Well, I'll give this another try. We're hoping. A friend of mine decided that we needed to write a poem together, and so we did. And he would write 4 lines and give it back to me, and I'd write 4 and give it back to him. And I think that's how I came up with the name Windy Bob, because this thing got to be a little long-winded, but it was a dang good poem. It's called A Gunman Named Red. He was the first person I noticed when I rode into town. As I passed him, he nodded, pulled his hat further down. He took out his Barlow and cut off a chaw, and the badge on his chest told me he was the law. So I reined in my horse, and looking back, I said, "Excuse me, do you know of the gunman named Red?" The lawman's eyes narrowed. He spit a stream from his mouth. "I know him, lives that way," and he pointed south. "What business is he of yours?" He had a hard gaze. So I told him, "I'm here to see Red in his grave." "Well, Red's not dead, son." He checked his watch. It was noon. I touched the grips of my Colt and said, "He will be soon." From the south there arose a faint cloud of dust, and I shielded my eyes and gave him time to adjust. "If you're gunning for Red, boy, you best take this test. Hit that fly on the wing, or you'll be dead like the rest." Without batting an eye, I slapped leather, then fired. The lawman, he smiled. "Looks like Red just retired." So then I turned my pony south to where the lawman had shown. I'd vowed one day to make Red pay for all the seeds he'd sown. So I found the farm, like the lawman said, and I got down on my feet. "Best come on out, Red. Make it quick. You have a destiny to meet." But Red wasn't home. So I went on in. No one had been there for a while, and what I saw on the fireplace hearth caused a tear and then a smile. It stood all alone in a dusty frame, a picture of Red's wife, and in her arms held lovingly a child that had just entered life. It embarrassed me then how I lost myself. I knew I had to get meaner. I couldn't help it, though, so I lowered my eyes, and I wished I'd never seen her. Next to the fireplace, hanging on the wall, was a squeeze box and an old fiddle. They looked like they had been played a lot, 'cause they was real worn in the middle. I crossed the room to the kitchen door. Some old sweetbread was on the table. I pulled off the mold and took me some. Got a drink from a bucket with a ladle. Something moved outside in the back of the house, and I jumped for the open door. 3 shots rang out, and one found its mark, and I tumbled to the floor. With my gun out, I wheeled about and answered with 3 more. I couldn't see if I'd hit anything, so I raised up to see what for. There in the dust of a small breezeway lay a woman with her hand on a gun. I had no time to look for reason or rhyme, but I thought about what I'd done. The thought of killing a woman is a hard thing for a man, and at that moment I really despised the gun in my right hand. But then I heard a soft moan. It came from the girl on the floor. I turned her over, then pulled her to the light from the open door. I placed my ear upon her breast and hoped her heart still beat. Then I felt her Colt barrel graze me where my head and ear meet. She was alive, very much alive, and her finger was tight on the trigger, and the blast that would come in a moment would be painless and quick, I figured. And then I noticed she wasn't Red's age, much younger and beautiful, too. The gal in the picture or the babe in arms, she was the younger of the 2. But she had spared my life, so when I picked her up, I waited for her comment. When I didn't get none, I took her inside, and then I had the urge to vomit. She had just been grazed, which had left her dazed, but now her eyes were bright and clear. But she never moved that .44 from that place above my ear. But I still felt sick, and then I realized I had been shot too. That's when my knees got weak, and I staggered like I'd been drinking quite a few. So just before the blackness came, I hurried in to set her on the bed. I noticed then she had moved her gun from that place beside my head. Next thing I knew, I smelled prairie stew, heard it bubbling on the stove. When I tried to rise, I grabbed my side. She gave me a little shove. The "It's okay, cowboy. You better rest or you'll be busting open." Her voice was as sweet as an angel's, and it set my heart to hoping. She had dug the bullet out of my side and sewed me up real fine with a needle from her sewing kit and a length of colored twine. But watching her work was real likable, must have meant that I was mending, 'cause I felt good enough I could have grabbed her while she was doing her tending. She had me real restless and hoping for something more when I remembered the reason that I came and what I was here for. I asked her then if she knew of the gunman named Red. She looked down at the floor, then sat down on the bed. She didn't move, just sat in silence, and I could tell that she was weak. Then I saw that one big tear roll down her flush red cheek. I had turned to look with her at that spot on the floor when the shadow of a man appeared at the open door. I lunged for my gun to kill the outlaw, pulled a hammer and pointed at this man that I saw. I was filled with relief to find the sheriff standing there. I grinned and holstered my gun and said, "I nearly parted your hair." But the sheriff didn't seem amused. His eyes were a narrow slit. His hands was on the grip of his coat, and his fingers tapped a bit. He cleared his throat and said to me, "You find what you came for?" "Nah, the outlaw Red, he ain't around." And I got up off the floor. "What'd he do, this gunman Red?" the sheriff said to me. "You got a burr beneath your rig, and that's plain enough to see." I looked away and quietly said, "Well, he loved my ma." "That's all he done," the sheriff said. "That beats all I ever saw." "I want his life," I blurted out, "but not 'cause love is bad. I'll see him dead 'cause he broke ma's heart and never knew he was my dad. He left us, see, just plumb run out 8 months before I was born, and for that dirty deed I'll hang his sack from my saddle horn." The color drained from the sheriff's face. There was a tremble on his lip. His eyes turned misty and his hand fell away from the gun upon his hip. In a voice that cracked, he asked the boy, "What's your mama's name?" "Lorena," was the boy's reply. "Her name's Lorena Jane." The sheriff shook. His eyes rolled back. His head dropped to his chest. He paused and stared for a while. "I got a confession to make, I guess." "I'm your pa," the sheriff said. He spoke it soft and low. "I won't throw down, so hear me out before you kill me and you go. My name is Red, and I'll bet you'll find we've got the same last name. I loved your ma, made her my bride, and vowed with her I would remain. But you ran out," the boy cried, "snuck off in the night." "Did no such thing. It was '63, and there was a war to fight. I rode off with old Beauregard, and I told her I'd be back '65 when I returned. Our home was a rundown shack. For 2 long years I searched for her, till finally I give in. I took the job as sheriff, and ever since that's where I've been. But this one thing you must understand. I never knew about you. Since I was going off to war, your mama never said. That's just something that women do. Your mama knew the South must fight. She never asked me to stay. And had I known about a son, no army could drag me away. So go ahead, son, pull your gun. I said I won't throw down. Lay me low, put a star on my grave, 'cause that's all I've been to this town. A gunman? Yeah, but a lawman too. And of my job I've always been proud. So hang my guns on the office wall and let my hat be my burial shroud." My hands hung limp by my sides, but my teeth were still clenched tight. Should I draw my gun and cut him down? I felt I had the right. Then I stole a glance at the girl's face. Her emotion she could not hide, and she never took her eyes off me, but she walked to the sheriff's side. The tears came then into my eyes and blurred what sight I had, and my hand reached down for my gun, but as I pulled it, I shook real bad. Then I thought about who I was aiming at, my dad and my sister, and my feelings kind of scared me some as I pointed at that mister. I wanted to believe his story, but the rage still filled my heart. I just had to shoot at something, and I had right from the start. As I squeezed the trigger of the gun, with each recoil I would shudder. But I had placed 6 rounds in my targets, and no sound did they utter. They stood in silence and stared at me as the echo of the blast died down, and they held tight to each other as if waiting for another round. I dropped the pistol to the floor. These 2 were my only kin, and I only managed to dad and sis as their arms welcomed me in. "Can you forgive me, son," the old man said, "for the mistakes that I have sired?" "I guess he can," said my new sis. "He missed all 6 that he fired." Thanks, Two Feathers.